Urgent, bloodshed in Moscow, a terrorist attack. Right in the heart of the Russian capital, a hunt for security forces has begun. The Kremlin Towers war has flared up with terrifying force. This is the beginning of a hellish purge of the system. The dictator's paranoia. Putin is afraid of the FSB. The bunker dweller has taken a desperate step. His own people are preparing a conspiracy. Russia is coming apart at the seams. Hatred is flowing like a river. More on all this ahead. Watch until the end. Ukraine Today welcomes you. Rinat Aslanova here with the latest events. Urgent, a real emergency in the heart of Moscow. A powerful explosion thundered there and a purge of police officers has begun. Could it be that the security forces have fallen out of favor with Putin? A car?
A marked traffic police car. It just exploded.
Moscow is exploding from within. A nightmare at Savyolovsky railway station. A police patrol car was turned into a heap of charred metal. Pro-war social media channels are hysterically leaking details of the terrorist attack. So, Russian media report that an unknown person allegedly approached the patrol car and detonated a homemade explosive device. Both the bomber himself and a police officer, a senior lieutenant of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, were killed. The blast wave threw the officer's body onto a nearby transformer booth. His partner, they say, is in critical condition in the hospital. Another officer was also injured less seriously but was hospitalized as well. Other eyewitnesses reported that the suspect in the explosion was filming a video at the scene and then walked away. All of Moscow is on edge. Footage from cameras that captured the aftermath of the incident is being circulated online, with notes stating that the search for the perpetrator continues.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
A short-haired man dressed all in black approached a service vehicle and threw an unknown explosive device at it, after which he began filming and then disappeared.
While the Kremlin frantically tries to hide the details of the Moscow massacre, the truth is leaking out. This is no longer an accident, but a series of daring attacks in the very heart of the enemy's lair. The main question is, why are the epaulets starting to fall off now? Has the witch hunt begun in the Kremlin, or have the security forces started taking revenge on each other? The tension has reached the point of no return. If even the security forces are under attack, it means the cracks have gone much deeper. And there were warning signs even before this. Putin has officially admitted that he no longer controls his security forces. He doesn't trust the army, nor does he trust the FSB. And it's the same story with the GRU. So what step does the dictator take? He signs a decree to create a new special service, presenting to you the main headquarters of the National Guard troops. It will be personally commanded by Putin's former bodyguard, Viktor Zolotov.
Vladimir Putin signed a decree that effectively handed control of the National Guard, or Rosgvardia, over to the Russian army. Analysts say this puts both institutions under the control of Valery Gerasimov, the commander of the Russian army and a person loyal to Putin, and believe that this move is likely intended to protect his regime. Especially considering that the National Guard did not engage Wagner forces during the Wagner mutiny in June 2023.
Judging by the published document, their powers will be quite extensive. They have been officially authorized to conduct their own intelligence activities, assess threats, and plan combat operations. Why does the National Guard, which is supposed to chase students with batons, need its own military intelligence at rallies? Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War have clearly explained Putin is trying to protect himself from another military mutiny.
Analysts say that this puts both institutions under the control of Valery Gerasimov, the commander of the Russian army, and a person loyal to Putin, and believe that this move is likely intended to protect his regime. Especially considering that the National Guard did not engage Wagner's forces during the Wagner mutiny in June 2023.
Of course, the Kremlin's master is terrified to death because he remembers all too well how Prigozhin's columns marched on Moscow. The much-praised FSB and police simply scattered into the bushes or waved at the Wagner fighters as they passed. That's why the dictator is pumping resources into his personal guard. Their main task is to eliminate Russian generals and the elite if they decide that Akela has missed his mark and it's time to replace him.
The subordination of the National Guard and part of the Ministry of Emergency Situations. This will significantly strengthen Gerasimov's control over Russian security service personnel at the General Staff, emphasizing that Putin is rewarding Gerasimov for his loyalty and that Gerasimov retains a central position in Putin's inner circle.
Urgently, Putin is afraid of a coup in Russia, the dictator's throne is shaking, and the bunker dwellers are hastily creating a new special service. The Kremlin is preparing for a bloodbath. What is Putin so afraid of? And has it really started to smell like trouble in Moscow? Shocking details ahead.
Putin has created a new special service under the leadership of his former bodyguard, Zolotov. I
am proud to serve under the leadership of a man who has once again made our country mighty and great. And I will do everything to make sure that certain individuals do not bring it back to the 1990s.
The main headquarters of the National Guard troops will be responsible for maintaining the combat readiness of the National Guard, directing the use of its forces, and also conducting intelligence operations.
We need to move forward in order to defend our country. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Expanded internal powers as the main body for terror within the Russian Federation and in the temporarily occupied territories. By the way, they are now starting to form internal intelligence. The intelligence service of the National Guard. It would seem, why would internal troops need their own intelligence service? In other words, something completely autonomous is being created.
Decades ago, Putin created the National Guard, which reports directly to him and supposedly for very noble purposes. But in reality, it was to suppress his own population.
The decision has been made.
We are creating a new federal executive body based on the internal troops of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. We are creating the National Guard, which will be engaged in fighting terrorism, fighting organized crime.
It is truly a formidable and massive parallel military force, which currently numbers approximately 400,000 active personnel and soldiers. Several heavy tank units have already been officially transferred there for support. Its primary and direct function is indeed to suppress any potential uprisings within the borders of the Russian Federation if it becomes necessary.
He appointed his trusted associate Viktor Zolotov as the head, who for years led Putin's personal security.
It's clear that your task is to sling mud at everything around you in order to destabilize both the political and economic situation within the country. Before I step over you and wipe my feet on you, I will put on a show for the entire personnel of the National Guard.
At the time, Putin claimed that this would help save the budget for the social sector. But in reality, the Kremlin dictator is building up his own army, pulling the last rubles from the pockets of ordinary citizens. In
this structure, everything related to weapons, to firearms, is now concentrated. This includes various types of security, the licensing system, oversight of private security companies, and in fact, the internal troops themselves. We expect that we will be able to increase the efficiency of this work and reduce the costs of maintaining various services.
We will have jobs and they will not. We will have pensions and they will not. Our children will go to schools and kindergartens while theirs will be hiding in basements.
with enormous amounts of budget money, the National Guard beats people with batons and detains those who disagree with the regime, protecting the Tsar from his own people.
Respect for the rights and freedoms of citizens, for the dignity of every person. I want to emphasize fighters and commanders, the personnel of the Russian National Guard always carry out their orders with honor. You bear enormous responsibility for maintaining order during mass events, for reliably protecting key industrial and infrastructure sites, and for organizing strict control in such an important area as the circulation of weapons.
The situation in Chechnya could develop in various ways, but we all understand perfectly well that it's about Kadyrov. It's unknown how much longer he will last and what will happen after him. And even Kadyrov's army is militarized, and it could also get out of control. This is just one small example. There are more than enough similar, more localized examples all across Russia.
Putin has to expand the security forces because he is afraid that sooner or later he will be held accountable for the war, which has brought only death and destruction to Russia.
This is fear, a very deep fear of Putin's, that Russians will return to Russian territory. Any empire must fight on its external borders. Russians who took an active part in combat operations in the war against Ukraine. Who will come home to the remote regions of the Russian Federation and actually start engaging in raiding, extortion, and forming gangs, people who understand what weapons of any kind are. And of course, to restore order, some kind of counterbalance will be needed.
But an inflated staff and high salaries are by no means a guarantee of complete loyalty. And who knows, maybe this new structure will turn into yet another version of the Prigozhin mutiny.
An explosion inside Russia. Russians are attacking migrants. Russia is coming apart at the seams. Clashes between Russians and non-Russians are flaring up one after another, turning into a chain reaction. Hatred is flowing like a river. Russia is on the brink of civil war. Watch.
In Russia, they're once again looking for enemies. This time not somewhere far away, but right in the courtyards, at markets and on construction sites. Migrants, non-Russians, and so on.
Wait, are you filming? What kind of registration is this? He hit someone. He didn't do anything.
Actually, he absolutely did not do anything whatsoever at all. Videos of raids and street altercations are appearing online almost every day.
Things in Russia are getting worse and worse, which means someone needs to be blamed. The first ones to be blamed are, of course, Ukraine, Europe, NATO, and all the others who are attacking Russia. But we all know, right? They all attacked Russia here, and now Russia is fighting them. But still, that's not enough, so they need to find some more internal enemies. Of course, there are internal enemies, the liberal opposition, foreign agents, and so on, but most of them have already left the country.
Civic activists play a special role in all of this. For example, the so-called Russian community. They call it restoring order.
The Russian community is just ordinary people. Just regular Russian people, working folks who work during the day at factories or organizations, and in the evening or in their free time, they get together simply to help maintain law and order on the streets because there aren't enough police officers.
But more often, these patrols look like a hunt for those who look different or speak with an accent.
Recently, we published a video called Russian Nationalist. He is rude to a Muslim. You...
Slave, Russian.
It seemed that this person was a member of the Russian community. But as soon as the community found out that their member was being sought, they immediately announced that now they were looking for the very guy who tried to stand up for his brother.
The Russian community has put a bounty on me.
But where exactly do these self-appointed and unofficial enforcers get this immense level of power and authority from?
It's allowed for now. That is, once again, the authorities believe that this is a convenient way to vent discontent, to let off steam, and so on.
But by the way, it doesn't really matter much whether you're a newcomer from India or a local from Bashkiria, Chechnya, or Tatarstan. Everyone feels the pressure.
Now they're openly going after the Chechens. First there were raids, now there's fire. The Cafe Chechen Cuisine 95 in Ramenskoye was burned to the ground. In the video, the moment of arson. The owners say outright that this is the work of the Russian community, those who have long been putting pressure on Muslims.
You know, it's something subconscious. A fear of people, of others, of people who are different from them. But the thing is, we seem to be living in the 21st century in an enlightened age. And when things like this happen, things that ended at least in the 20th century and in some places even earlier, what does that tell us? It tells us that today's Russia has descended into a deep, I would even say partially medieval state. And
what's important is that rhetoric about migrants is coming not only from ordinary people, but also from deputies.
But the authorities have opened the doors for the replacement of the population, so that millions would come here, then more millions, and then these millions, simply by being here, would to multiply and reproduce, turning into tens of millions, and they will gradually occupy all living space. As Senator Klisha said, they will live not with us, but instead of us.
And here's the paradox. While television is scaring people with migrants, the economy simply doesn't work without them.
To do. There's no one to work. Everyone was killed in the war, so who's going to work? That's why, yes, of course, they bring in migrants, sometimes one group, sometimes another. They used to bring in migrants from Central Asia. Now they'll be bringing them in from India. I guess they think it's something new, something unusual.
Moreover, there will be even more migrants. After all, Russia has also agreed to bring in labor from Afghanistan. And what difference does it make whether Russians like it or not? Is it safe for the country? After all, it's simply profitable. And
neglecting all the rules, especially with regard to their own population, leads to the fact that, of course, no one is going to think about their own people. But the work needs to be done, so what can you do? That means they'll bring in those who are the cheapest for them. Not because it's good or bad, but because it will cost us the least. And of course, poor Afghanistan, where people really do live in extreme poverty, probably bringing in workers from there is cheap.
the end, Russia lives in a strange mode. They look for enemies abroad, but at the same time manage to stir up conflicts within the country as well. Everyone who doesn't fit the image of the proper Russian comes under attack. And it's not just migrants, but also the non-Russian peoples of Russia itself.
This is a careless attitude toward their own population, a careless attitude toward the law. Pitting people against each other will end very, very badly for the current authorities. But, you know, what is bad for the current authorities, perhaps that's actually good.
It's frightening to worry about Chechnya. Don is in a panic. Kadyrov declares war on drones and throws around millions. Mobile air defense fire groups are being created in Chechnya, and now experts and analysts are asking, is this really about defense, or is it a cunning political performance by the leader of the TikTok troops? All the answers are coming up in the report. Rarely, but accurately, friendly drones attack Chechnya. It all started at the end of October 2024, when the Special Forces University in Gudermes came under attack. After the first attack, Kadyrov promised terrible revenge.
In the very near and rapidly approaching future, we will demonstrate to them and make them witness a level of severe and absolute retribution that they could not have even begun to imagine in their wildest and darkest dreams.
But 2 weeks later, a drone attacks a barracks, the Akhmat Special Police Regiment in Grozny. A few more days pass and the drones attack the Oman base. Also in Grozny, almost a year-long break, and then again in November 25, friendly drones reach Chechnya. The military unit of the Rosgvardia Akhmat Sever Regiment in the capital of the Republic came under attack. On December 2nd, drones attack the OMVD building in Gudermes. 3 more days later, and a strike lands near the FSB building in Grozny city. That's why Don is raging again and promises harsh revenge.
We will take revenge, Don, harshly, Don. Ours, Don, will have targets. Only military facilities. And you saw just how untouchable the Chechen Republic is supposed to be.
But revenge, just like repelling attacks, isn't working out, so the drones are striking both Chechnya and Ramzan Kadyrov's reputation. And it's actually Don's own fighters who are setting him up. In the summer of 25, to protect places important to Kadyrov, so-called mobile ambushes with anti-aircraft installations were deployed in the Republic. But due to the carelessness of Kadyrov's men, those setups are of little use. As of December 15th, drones are attacking the Oman base in Grozny.
On December 15th, all these ambushes and installations turned out to be useless, since it was a day off and the Chechen security forces had, as usual, gone home to eat and catch up on sleep. For the same reason, on the territory of the Oman, where on December 15th, a Ukrainian UAV swooped in without any obstacles, the anti-aircraft installations, instead of being on combat duty, were peacefully standing covered in a closed hangar. The third air attack on Grozny in a month caught everyone by surprise. The Oman officers not only failed to call the anti-aircraft operators to duty, they didn't even manage to find the keys to the hangar with the anti-aircraft guns.
The funniest thing is this. On the eve of this attack, Kadyrov decided to motivate his subordinates and promised 1 million rubles for every drone shot down. But, as we can see, they still failed to effectively shoot down the drones. Therefore, on February 17th, Kadyrov decided to create a new mobile air defense group.
Dear Ramzan Akhmatovich, at your instruction, a set of measures has been carried out in the Chechen Republic to strengthen the protection of the airspace. To promptly detect and neutralize threats, mobile fire groups have been formed from among the personnel of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the National Guard, and the Ministry of Defense, and they are provided with everything necessary. Around the clock, air defense is ensured by Ministry of Defense Systems and Electronic Warfare Systems.
So once again, the airspace of Chechnya will be protected by the same people who did it, or almost did it, before, only now as part of a separate unit. To the logical question of whether Chechnya's air defense will become more effective, the logical answer is no. So why create a new formation then? There are plenty of hidden motives. The simplest one is money.
Adrenal is making money off this. The Ministry of Defense allocates money. And naturally he gets some pretty decent, so to speak, financial bonuses from the Kremlin. These are the battalions. Why is it that it's always Kadyrov who creates new battalions in Chechnya? Some new battalions every time? 8 battalions? Some are funded by the Ministry of Defense, some by the Ahmad Kadyrov Foundation, and so on. Why? Because the money is being stolen, it's corruption.
But Kadyrov is not guided by funding alone. The Chechen Sultan needs a large army to protect himself and his clan. Well, how could it be otherwise when you love to declare blood feuds against everyone you meet? Besides, such compact and mobile units can easily be handed over to the direct control of young heirs. To Ahmad and Adam. There are more than enough positions for Kadyrov's offspring, and now there's also the prospect of a personal army. I
want all of this to remain so that they live a decent life and leave this world. He leaves behind a reputation and a legacy. And in the end, that is truly all that remains. I have done absolutely everything within my power.
But the new structure has another hidden goal. These mobile fire groups could become a tool for covert mobilization in the Republic. And it's not hard to believe, because the human rights organization Memorial wrote in 2022 and 2024 that security forces in Chechnya, to ensure a flow of volunteers, detain people. The opposition movement NII has reported fresh cases of raids by security forces. January 31st?
Reports are coming in from Urus Martan, where military enlistment office employees, together with security forces, continue to search for young men. Cars are being stopped on the roads.
And the raids often go even further. On February 6th, the same NII reported that security forces had kidnapped a person in order to send them to the front. But the air defense groups that have been created can also be used to abduct people who simply disagree with Kadyrov's regime.
Every security agency is supposed to show so-called results. That is, people right now. And if, when something new is created, when a new structure is set up, then naturally the new commander tries to prove himself as much as possible. In Chechnya, Tezul 5 is the fundamental work of the Kadyrovites and Kadyrov himself. Why? What is Kadyrov's first and main task? Not to capture Kiev in 3 days. Not to go to Dubai and hang out with some sheikhs. It's not about getting closer to the east. Kadyrov's main and primary task is to ensure that Chechnya remains part of Russia. And he must use any means necessary. It doesn't matter. Pressure through relatives, kidnapping a person, murder, torture, rape. It doesn't matter. Complete intimidation. About
how Kadyrov and his... Absolutely everyone knows how Kadyrov and his henchmen deal with those they don't like. Reports about abductions are published almost every day. Torture is commonplace and it often leads to murder. And yes, it's far from specialized agencies that carry out these reprisals.
For example, let's take the Oil Regiment. The Oil Regiment is a military unit that guards oil wells and facilities in Chechnya. They are supposed to just provide security. But the Oil Regiment is also involved in abductions, torture, and producing results. All security forces in Chechnya are expected to do this.
But even after 20 years of living under oppression, there are still dissenters in Chechnya. And with attacks on the region, their numbers have grown. That's why Kadyrov's security forces continue their work, and Ramzan himself threatens to behead critics of the regime after drone strikes on the Republic. Given such direct threats, it's not surprising that the locations of mobile air defense ambushes coincided with unstable areas, where, instead of shooting down drones, there was a surge in detentions and abductions. And we're talking about an increase in cases by 40 to 50%. Involving air defense groups in abductions allows Kadyrov's security forces to detain people in a complete information vacuum. After all, the air defense group's pickups are equipped with electronic warfare systems, and the power of these systems is sufficient to block cellular communication and mobile internet in the targeted area. This critical situation makes it absolutely impossible for people to transmit urgent warnings about the rapid approach of security forces, or to send out vital messages regarding illegal detentions. Consequently, by cutting off these essential lines of communication, Kadyrov's authoritarian regime will be able to completely and systematically suppress any remaining forms of opposition within the region.